feeling unmotivated, stuck, or always waiting for the right time to begin, that hesitation is costing you everything. The truth is, successful people aren't always the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones who force themselves to act when it's hard. Imagine living with unshakable discipline, no more excuses, no more waiting, just a relentless commitment to your goals. In this video, I'll show you how to train your mind to move with power even when you don't feel like it, so you build real momentum, real results, and real success, because once you stop negotiating with yourself, everything begins to change. 1. Success is a decision, not a gift. Most people are raised believing that success is something you wait for, that it arrives after inspiration hits, when circumstances align, or when luck finally shows up. This belief is not just misleading, it's dangerous. It trains people to be passive, to hope instead of act, to wish instead of work. But here's the truth that separates those who merely survive from those who thrive. Success doesn't come to those who feel ready, it comes to those who decide they're done waiting. In the real world, successful people aren't the ones who had perfect timing or endless motivation. They're the ones who made a decision, a clear, conscious decision that success was not optional, it was a requirement. And from that point forward, they took action whether they felt like it or not. They stopped depending on emotion and built their lives around execution. Science supports this idea. Research in behavioral psychology, particularly in the field of neuroplasticity, has shown that habits are formed not by bursts of inspiration but through repeated actions over time. It takes roughly 66 days on average to form a new habit. During that period, you're not coasting on motivation, you're pushing through resistance. And those who succeed are the ones who push anyway. They force the habit until it becomes part of who they are. The world rewards doers, not dreamers. The most successful entrepreneurs, athletes, and creators often began without perfect conditions. Elon Musk didn't wait for permission to build SpaceX. Oprah Winfrey didn't wait for the perfect role to become a media icon. They made a decision and followed it with relentless action. The mindset shift was the catalyst. The decision was the ignition. Everything else was built on that foundation. This paragraph also cuts through the illusion of readiness. The idea that we must feel confident, capable, or emotionally secure before we take action is false. Psychologists have a name for this cycle. It's called the intention-action gap. You want to act, but you wait for the right internal state. But here's the twist. Taking action often creates the motivation you were waiting for. Action breeds confidence. Progress fuels commitment. It's a feedback loop, but it only begins once you start. Moreover, neuroscience tells us that the brain doesn't differentiate much between real and imagined success. If you decide firmly on a path and visualize it with clarity and detail, the brain starts to build new neural pathways aligned with that belief. This is why mindset is so powerful. A strong decision triggers mental and emotional alignment. The moment you decide success is non-negotiable, your brain starts filtering information, energy, and focus to support that reality. But here's what people miss. Decisions without action are empty. This is where discipline comes in. Discipline is the ability to stick to your decision long after the mood to do so has faded. It's waking up early when it's cold. It's putting in the reps when you're tired. It's reading when you'd rather scroll. And it's choosing discomfort over ease every single day. Real success stories are often messy. They're filled with doubt, stress, setbacks, and late nights. But behind every story is a person who simply refused to quit. Not because they had superhuman motivation, but because they had made a decision. They decided they were going to win, not try, not hope, but win. And that mindset created a level of consistency that others couldn't match. We live in a culture addicted to inspiration, motivational videos, feel-good quotes, the next big productivity hack, but none of that matters if you don't execute. You can watch 100 videos about becoming great, but if you don't act, you stay the same, and that's the brutal truth. You either choose to take command of your life, or you surrender control to distractions, emotions, and excuses. The line, "you either control your life or life controls you," isn't just poetic, it's rooted in cognitive science. The concept of locus of control explains that people with an internal locus believe they have power over their outcomes. Those with an external locus believe life just happens to them. Studies show that individuals with a strong internal locus of control tend to be more successful, healthier, and resilient. Why? Because they take responsibility. They stop blaming and start building. And success. True success isn't an accident. It's not a reward handed out to the lucky or the privileged. It's a result. The result of a decision backed by discipline, consistency, and clarity. It's forged in quiet hours of work, in days when you don't feel like showing up, and in years of pushing through the noise. Ultimately, this paragraph is a challenge, a wake-up call. If you're waiting for the right time, stop. If you're waiting to feel inspired, stop. If you're waiting for someone to choose you, stop. Choose yourself. Decide that you will win. Decide that your goals are not optional. Decide that your excuses are done, because the moment you decide that success is a must, everything changes. Success is not given, it's not found, it's not stumbled upon, it is forced by those who refuse to be ordinary. And the moment you truly decide, your life begins to transform. Not overnight, not easily, but inevitably. Decide, act, persist. That's how you take control. That's how you rise. And that's how you win. 2. Stop hoping, start forcing. Hope, while often portrayed as noble and necessary, can become a trap if it's not paired with consistent action. The paragraph makes a bold but accurate claim: hope alone changes nothing. And in the context of achieving goals or building success, excessive reliance on hope can quietly sabotage progress. It lulls people into passivity, into waiting for the right circumstances or the right mindset, and while they wait, life moves on. That's why this message is so critical. If you want to change your life, you don't hope it happens, you force it to. Let's clarify this idea with research-backed context. A study by psychologist Charles Snyder, who pioneered the theory of hope in psychology, found that hope, when properly understood, involves more than wishful thinking. It includes both the desire to achieve goals and the pathways or strategies to achieve them. In other words, hope must be paired with action plans. But in popular culture, people often cling to hope as an emotional crutch. They believe that by wanting something badly enough, it will somehow happen. But neuroscience and behavioral science both disagree. Neuroscience reveals that the brain is action-oriented. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter often linked to motivation, is released not just when we receive rewards, but when we anticipate them through action. When you begin to act toward a goal, even in small ways, your brain chemically supports your effort. But if you sit idle and hope, the dopamine response weakens. This is why discipline, not emotion, becomes the driver of real change. The brain rewards progress, not potential. That's why the line "you build the habits" is so critical. According to researchers like James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, success is not determined by big dramatic events, it's the outcome of small, repeated behaviors. Habits compound. One healthy meal doesn't change your body, but 300 will. One workout doesn't create strength, but years of consistent effort will. And you don't build habits by waiting to feel good. You build them by showing up when it's hard. This is where the concept of forcing comes in. Force doesn't mean brutality. It means deliberate pressure. Pressure applied with consistency. It's what separates successful people from those who plateau. When you don't feel like working but do it anyway, that's force. When you face failure and go back to the drawing board, that's force. When you train when you're tired, study when you're bored, practice when no one's watching, that's what this paragraph is pointing to. It's also important to dismantle the myth that success is about talent. Yes, talent gives you a head start, but that advantage fades without discipline. A meta-analysis published in Psychological Science, McNamara et al. 2014, found that deliberate practice accounts for a significant portion of performance differences across all domains: sports, music, academics. In simpler terms, the people at the top aren't just the most gifted, they're the ones who work the hardest, longest, and smartest. They force themselves to improve. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school varsity team. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. None of them waited for permission. None of them relied on feeling inspired every day. They acted, adjusted, and persisted over and over again until success was inevitable. This mindset, forcing yourself to keep going, isn't natural. The brain is wired for safety, for ease. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and long-term planning, constantly competes with the limbic system, which seeks short-term pleasure and comfort. That's why people procrastinate, why they avoid the gym, why they scroll instead of create. But here's the power of discipline. Every time you override the comfort impulse, you rewire your brain. Through neuroplasticity, the brain adapts, and over time, what once felt difficult becomes automatic. That's how discipline becomes identity. The paragraph ends with perhaps the most important insight. Discipline is forcing yourself to do what must be done, long after the mood is gone. This isn't just a motivational quote, it's supported by the work of Angela Duckworth, whose research on grit, a combination of passion and perseverance, found that consistent effort over time is a stronger predictor of success than IQ, talent, or socioeconomic status. People who succeed keep showing up even when they don't feel like it. They've learned to separate emotions from execution. This also ties into the concept of emotional regulation. In high-performance psychology, athletes, entrepreneurs, and creatives are trained to operate based on principle, not feeling. When you make decisions based on values and purpose, not emotions, you remain consistent. This consistency builds momentum, and that momentum creates results. The truth is, forcing yourself to act, especially when you don't feel like it, is a form of power. You take your mind off autopilot, you stop being a slave to distraction and emotion, you become intentional, and that intention is what moves the needle. When you look at anyone who's achieved something great, you're not seeing the hopeful version of them, you're seeing the disciplined version, the one who pushed through sickness, through doubt, through fatigue, the one who didn't wait for motivation but built momentum through action. And when you do that enough, you cross a line, a threshold where effort becomes identity, where excellence becomes your default mode, not because it's easy, but because you've forced yourself there. So if you're stuck, if you're waiting, if you keep telling yourself that someday you'll start, this paragraph is your reality check. Stop hoping. Hope without action is delusion. Potential without execution is wasted. You don't need more inspiration. You need movement. You need strategy. You need discipline. You need force. Because the person who forces themselves to rise even when it hurts is the one who eventually leaves everyone else behind. And if you want to change your life, the formula is clear. Less wishing, more working. Less hoping, more habits. Less waiting, more forcing. That's where the transformation begins. 3. Pain is the price of power. At the core of this message is a fundamental principle of human development. Growth comes from stress. Just like a muscle must be torn down through resistance to grow stronger, the human mind, character, and capability also expand through challenge. In biology, this is known as hormesis, a process where exposure to stress in small, controlled doses actually leads to strength and resilience. You lift heavy weights, your body adapts. You push through hard days, your mindset strengthens. Pain is not something to be avoided. It's the exact force that sculpts who you become. Research in psychology supports this fully. The concept of post-traumatic growth, developed by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, shows that individuals often experience significant personal growth after enduring adversity, not despite the hardship, but because of it. Struggles force us to reframe our identity, clarify our priorities, and cultivate inner strength. In fact, many successful people don't just tolerate pain, they learn to leverage it. The paragraph lists examples that are universal among high achievers: the long nights, early mornings, rejection, and self-doubt. These aren't exceptions, they're the norm. When you study the routines and histories of elite performers, athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, leaders, you'll always find moments of pain, not glamorous pain, not Hollywood-style drama, but quiet suffering, sacrifices that few people see or understand. Kobe Bryant practicing for hours before sunrise, Elon Musk sleeping on the Tesla factory floor, J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter while battling poverty and depression. These weren't side effects, they were the process. The second part of the paragraph focuses on how successful people approach pain. They walk straight into it. That mindset is key. Most people are wired to avoid discomfort. The human brain is evolutionarily designed to seek safety and pleasure and avoid pain. The amygdala, responsible for threat detection, is constantly scanning for discomfort and trying to steer you away from it. But in the modern world, that ancient survival mechanism can work against us. It makes us avoid the very challenges that would help us grow. Winners override that impulse. They don't wait for the feeling of readiness or ease. They force themselves forward, especially when every part of them says stop. In performance psychology, this is called mental override, the capacity to push past emotional resistance through willpower and trained discipline. Navy SEALs, elite athletes, and high-performance individuals all train for this deliberately. They don't hope they'll be strong when it counts. They build that response day by day, rep by rep. The key phrase in this section is, when their body says no, when their mind wants to quit, when every fiber screams stop. This is the exact point where most people fail, because they interpret that resistance as a sign to back off. But in truth, that's where transformation begins. It's the threshold, the moment that separates those who want success from those who are committed to it. Crossing that line repeatedly rewires your identity. Every time you push when it's hard, you reinforce the belief, I'm the type of person who finishes, I don't quit. And the research backs this up. Angela Duckworth's groundbreaking work on grit defines it as the combination of passion and sustained persistence over time. Her studies show that gritty individuals consistently outperform those who rely on talent alone. Why? Because they're willing to endure pain. They see setbacks as temporary. They stay in the fight longer. Pain for them isn't the end, it's part of the journey. Then we arrive at the line, pain refines the committed and destroys the weak. That's not just poetic, it's factual. Pain is a filter. It exposes who's serious and who's pretending. The committed feel pain, but they don't let it dictate their actions. The weak, those who never develop the ability to suffer with purpose, crumble under it. And it's not about toughness in the macho sense, it's about resilience. The ability to endure discomfort with direction, to keep going when there's no reward in sight, to act when every part of you wants to retreat. This leads to an important truth. Pain doesn't just test your limits, it reveals your potential. Most people never find out what they're capable of because they tap out too soon. They interpret pain as punishment rather than progress. But when you change the meaning of pain, you change your relationship to it. If you see it as the price of power, as this paragraph frames it, you stop resenting it and start using it. And pain isn't just individual, it's also deeply tied to excellence. In the world of elite sports, business, and creative mastery, the top 1% are separated not by luck, but by tolerance for sustained discomfort. Research published in the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology shows that elite performers are more likely to use adaptive coping strategies like reframing stress, embracing adversity, and staying committed through long-term setbacks. These are skills, not traits, which means they can be learned, but only if you're willing to pay the price. In today's world where convenience is sold at every turn, fast food, quick wins, instant gratification, the willingness to endure pain becomes a superpower. It gives you an edge. Most people can't sit still for 10 minutes without distraction, let alone work for years on a goal that offers no guaranteed payoff. But if you can, if you force yourself through the painful parts, you automatically rise above the majority. The beauty of this idea is its simplicity. There's no magic, no secret formula, just this. Decide what you want and be willing to hurt for it. Not just once, not just when it's exciting, but every day, in small and sometimes brutal ways. And if you can embrace that, then pain becomes not something you fear, but something that fuels you. Because pain, when faced with intention, transforms, it sharpens, it reveals, and eventually it empowers. But only for those who choose to walk through it, not around it. That's the cost of success. Are you willing to pay? 4. The myth of motivation about a woman who doesn't. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the modern conversation about success. It's glamorized, commercialized, and packaged as the secret fuel that drives winners. But that's a lie. This paragraph dismantles that myth by stating something most people don't want to hear. Motivation is fleeting. It's a feeling, and like any feeling, it comes and goes. If your entire plan to achieve success is built on waiting for the moment when you feel inspired, you're going to lose. Because the truth is, winners don't depend on how they feel, they depend on what they do consistently, regardless of emotion. Psychological research backs this up. A 2018 study published in Psychological Bulletin reviewed over 100 studies on motivation and performance. The conclusion was clear. Motivation does not reliably lead to long-term achievement. In fact, action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. This is a cognitive behavioral concept known as the behavioral activation model. The idea is simple. The more you act, the more motivated you become. Not because you feel like it, but because the brain rewards movement with momentum. This paragraph drives that point. With the metaphor of a spark and a fire, motivation might be the initial spark. It can be that emotional lift you feel after a great speech, a powerful video, or an inspiring story. But sparks don't last. They ignite, then fade. What keeps the fire burning is structure, systems, habits, the invisible daily choices that don't look impressive but compound over time. That's where discipline enters the equation. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself. It's about building consistency. It's creating a schedule and sticking to it, even when you don't feel like it. It's showing up to the gym when you're tired. It's sitting down to write when your brain is foggy. It's choosing to work when your friends are out partying. That's not glamorous, but it's powerful, because every time you follow through without motivation, you reinforce your identity as someone who executes. This is exactly why the paragraph says successful people don't rely on emotions, they rely on systems. That's a critical distinction. Motivation is emotional, but systems are strategic. A system is a repeatable process. Wake up at 6 a.m., journal for 5 minutes, write for 2 hours, train at 4 p.m., eat the same healthy meals. Systems remove decision fatigue. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? You do it because it's part of the plan. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, explains this well. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That means goals are direction, but systems are execution. Winners build systems that function even when motivation is low. They design environments that make the right choice automatic. For example, they keep distractions off their phones, set fixed blocks of time for deep work, or prepare meals in advance to avoid impulsive eating. These aren't hacks, they're strategic habits. There's also neuroscience behind this. The brain loves patterns. When you do something repeatedly, you activate the basal ganglia, the brain region responsible for habit formation. Over time, this process reduces the cognitive load required to make decisions. That's why successful people can stick to boring routines for years. They've automated discipline. The result is mental energy reserved for higher-order thinking and creativity. They don't waste willpower deciding whether to work. The system decides for them. Another crucial part of the paragraph is the line, success isn't found in the highs of motivation, it's built in the boring, quiet hours when nobody is watching. That may be one of the most honest lines in personal development. The highlight reels of social media show the wins, the trophy, the business launch, the transformation photo. But none of that shows the 4 a.m. alarms, the rewrites, the failed launches, the skipped parties, the setbacks and corrections and late nights. That's the real work, and it's not fun, but it's necessary. A 10-year longitudinal study from Stanford University found that grit defined as passion and perseverance for long-term goals outperforms talent, intelligence, and even opportunity in predicting success. The gritty aren't always excited, they aren't fueled by hype, they're powered by a deep commitment to the process, and that's why the final line hits hard. Winners aren't always excited, but they always execute. That line should be written on every gym wall, every office, every studio where people are building something that matters. Because we live in a world that has trained people to chase feelings, to believe that if it doesn't feel right, it's not the right time. That mindset destroys potential. Winners reject that belief. They operate off principle, not passion, off commitment, not comfort. Even elite athletes, the people most glorified for their motivation, will tell you the truth. Most days they don't feel like training. But they train anyway, because they've made a contract with themselves, not one based on feelings but on outcomes. When you do that, motivation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. So how do you build that level of execution? The key is to design your discipline. You don't wait to become motivated, you build systems that trigger action. Wake up at the same time every day. Use timers to lock in focused work. Remove temptations from your environment. Reward consistency, not intensity. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be relentless. And remember, this doesn't mean you'll never feel unmotivated. You will. Everyone does. The difference is how you respond. Do you stop, or do you execute anyway? That's the separation point. That's what builds confidence and competence. When you act in spite of how you feel, you take control of your mind. You stop being a slave to emotion and become a master of your habits. In the end, motivation is a myth because it's not what creates greatness. It's discipline, it's structure, it's habits that don't care how you feel. If you want to win, don't chase motivation, build a system and show up for it, even on the days when it's boring, hard and thankless, because success isn't about being excited. It's about getting it done, every single day. 5. Your environment is lying to you. Humans are deeply influenced by their environment. This isn't opinion, it's psychology. The theory of environmental conditioning tells us that behavior is shaped by cues, social norms, and environmental triggers. If you're surrounded by people who take shortcuts, avoid hard work, or prioritize comfort over growth, chances are you'll start adopting the same patterns consciously or unconsciously. In fact, research published in Science in 2012 showed that even our decisions about effort and self-control are heavily influenced by subtle environmental factors. This means your surroundings can either push you forward or pull you down without you even realizing it. The paragraph states, "Your surroundings will whisper lies. These lies are subtle, not aggressive. They come as rationalizations. Take the day off. You already did more than most. There's always tomorrow." These thoughts sound harmless, even self-compassionate, but they're not. They're excuses wrapped in comfort. They are the mental equivalent of junk food, satisfying in the moment, but toxic in the long run. The real trap is that your brain loves these lies. From an evolutionary standpoint, the brain is wired to conserve energy. The limbic system, especially the amygdala, is always looking for the path of least resistance. It treats discomfort like a threat. That's why your own thoughts will try to talk you out of growth. They'll urge you to stay warm, stay safe, stay still, but growth demands the opposite. It demands that you choose discomfort, that you voluntarily walk into difficulty, and this is exactly what the paragraph urges, to learn to say no, not just to friends or distractions, but to yourself, to your weaker voice, the one that wants easy. Saying no is hard. It's especially hard when it means disappointing people around you. Friends might not understand why you'd wake up at 5 a.m. to train. Family might question why you're working late nights instead of relaxing. But high achievement often looks like obsession to the average. And here's what science shows. Social conformity bias, our tendency to mirror the behaviors and beliefs of those around us, can derail our goals if we don't actively resist it. Saying no to your environment doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means choosing your influences wisely. It means curating your space, your circle, and your habits to serve your goals, not sabotage them. The second half of the paragraph breaks the illusion that success is convenient. In fact, it declares the opposite. Success is built in places that feel unnatural. This aligns with the concept of voluntary hardship, a term used in elite performance coaching. The most successful individuals deliberately place themselves in controlled discomfort to build resilience. David Goggins, former Navy SEAL and endurance athlete, famously trains in extreme conditions, not for the physical gain, but to sharpen the mental edge. He understands that pushing through unnatural environments builds a mindset that doesn't break when things get hard. Think about the most transformative moments in any achiever's life. They never happened on a couch. They happened during grueling workouts, in lonely studios, during failed launches, in the quiet hours when no one was watching. The paragraph's examples, 5 a.m. gym sessions, late-night reading, uncelebrated hours of work, are not metaphors. They are literal. These moments are the raw ingredients of greatness. They are where discipline is tested and forged. Psychological studies confirm that consistent action taken during low motivation periods strengthens identity. According to research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, our self-image is not just shaped by what we think, but by what we do consistently, especially in difficult circumstances. So when you wake up early to train, read when you're tired, or work when it's inconvenient, you're not just progressing toward a goal, you're telling your brain, "This is who I am." And that identity shift is where everything changes. The final line, "Force yourself to leave comfort behind because nothing grows there," isn't just a motivational phrase. It's a principle rooted in biology, psychology, and performance science. Growth happens at the edge of capability, not at the center of ease. In neuroplasticity, this is called the optimal stress zone, the idea that the brain forms new connections fastest when pushed slightly beyond its current limits. Not overwhelmed, not relaxed, challenged. This is why real growth only occurs outside your comfort zone, because that's where adaptation is triggered. But stepping out of comfort is rarely automatic. It must be forced, not because it's unnatural to grow, but because it's unnatural to seek pain. That's why the word force is so critical in this paragraph. Left to emotion, you'll revert. Left to convenience, you'll settle. Force is the mechanism that carries you across the threshold again and again until discomfort becomes normal. And once it's normal, you're dangerous, because then you're willing to go where most won't. And let's be clear, comfort isn't just about lying on a couch or skipping workouts. It's deeper than that. Comfort is saying yes to easy validation, avoiding risk, hiding from challenge, and staying in circles that don't stretch you. It's a mindset of preservation rather than progression. And in the long term, it doesn't just halt growth, it reverses it. Comfort shrinks your capacity, it dulls your ambition, it weakens your edge. That's why the successful don't tolerate it. They replace it with routine, with structure, with strategic discomfort. In practical terms, this means you should intentionally design your environment to support discomfort. Put your alarm out of reach, pre-commit to your workouts, leave your phone in another room, surround yourself with driven people, set clear standards and enforce them. Make the unnatural natural, because the more friction you remove from the hard things, the more automatic they become. And when discomfort becomes your baseline, growth becomes your lifestyle. In the end, this paragraph is a warning, it's a mirror. It's calling out the subtle lies your environment feeds you every day. And it's reminding you that if you keep listening to those lies, if you keep choosing what feels good, you'll never become who you could be, because success doesn't grow in safety, it grows in sacrifice. And if you want to become someone exceptional, you'll need to say no to what's easy, to what's familiar, and to what's comfortable, over and over again, until discomfort becomes your new home. 6. Your mind will resist, win anyway. That voice has a name in psychology. It's called inner resistance, a term popularized by Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art. Resistance is the invisible force that opposes any act that leads to growth, creativity, or discipline. It shows up when you sit down to work, when you wake up early, when you attempt to change a habit or start something new, and it's ruthless. It's not loud or dramatic, it's logical, persuasive, and patient. That's why it's so effective. It sounds like common sense. It sounds like self-care, but underneath it all, it's fear, it's avoidance, it's comfort wearing a disguise. The paragraph opens with a radical reframe. Your greatest enemy is not failure, it's hesitation. That's powerful because it contradicts what most people believe. We're trained to fear failure, but in reality, failure is feedback. It teaches, it sharpens, it's the result of action. Hesitation, on the other hand, kills momentum before it starts. And the longer you hesitate, the harder it is to move forward. Neuroscience supports this idea. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for decision-making, becomes increasingly overwhelmed with uncertainty the longer you delay action. That's why the best performers don't wait. They move. They trust process over perfection. They win the moment, not the debate. The second sentence of the paragraph is a challenge. You must become stronger than your excuses. This isn't metaphor, it's instruction. Your excuses will never go away. They are generated by your limbic system, the part of the brain concerned with survival, not greatness. The limbic system avoids discomfort. It wants short-term pleasure, ease, and predictability. It doesn't care about your goals or your legacy. That's why you must operate from your executive function, the rational and deliberate part of your brain that handles self-control and long-term planning. You must train yourself repetitively to obey the higher part of your mind, not the emotional reflexes that seek escape. That's why the paragraph says, you must build a mind that follows command, not feeling. In elite military and sports training, this principle is non-negotiable. Command overrides comfort. You don't ask if you feel like executing, you execute because it's the standard. That's what discipline really is, internal authority. It's not about harshness or rigidity, it's about programming your brain to act on decisions, not on emotions. This is also backed by cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which proves that repeated action in the face of discomfort rewires neural pathways. Over time, the brain begins to associate discipline with identity. You don't just do hard things, you become the kind of person who does hard things. And that's where the next part of the paragraph lands its punch. You force yourself not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. This is the gap between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs wait for ideal conditions. Professionals create those conditions through consistency. The word force isn't aggressive, it's intentional. It means showing up when you don't want to. It means working through mental resistance. It means honoring the commitment long after the excitement has died. Every time you force yourself to show up, especially when your mind resists, you increase your internal power. Let's go deeper into that. In behavioral science, this act of overriding emotional impulses is known as response inhibition. It's a crucial executive function that predicts everything from academic success to athletic performance. In a study published by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, individuals with strong self-regulation abilities were shown to outperform others over long periods, regardless of intelligence or background. Why? Because they acted when it was difficult, because they didn't let feelings dictate behavior, because they learned to win the mental game. Now we reach the climax of the paragraph. Every time you override your weakness, your power grows. That's not motivational fluff, it's neuroscience. Each time you take action despite internal resistance, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex and reinforcing what's called effort-based learning. It's the same mechanism used in building habits and overcoming addiction. When your brain sees that effort leads to positive outcomes, even emotionally, those pathways get stronger. So yes, every rep counts. Every choice to override comfort compounds. It's not just discipline, it's identity change at a neurological level. That's why the paragraph's closing lines are so accurate and potent. That's where success lives, in resistance, in discipline, in self-conquest. Let's break that down. Resistance is where the battle starts. Discipline is the weapon, and self-conquest is the result. Success isn't just about achieving goals. It's about defeating the weaker version of yourself over and over again until it no longer controls you. It's about owning your mind, not being owned by it. You can see this principle in every high performer on the planet. Serena Williams didn't become great because she felt motivated every day. She became great because she kept showing up through injury, through loss, through fatigue. Steve Jobs didn't revolutionize industries because he had constant clarity. He did it because he worked through uncertainty. Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't build a legacy in bodybuilding, film, and politics by listening to the voice that said rest. He silenced that voice and replaced it with command. That's the level of discipline this paragraph is calling for, the kind where hesitation dies before it can speak, where resistance is expected, not feared, where you develop the kind of mind that acts on orders, not feelings. So when your mind starts resisting, and it will, you win anyway, you act anyway, you train anyway, because that's the moment that matters most, not the moment when it's easy, but the one where every cell in your body says, not today, and you look it in the eye and say, watch me. Success doesn't happen despite resistance. It happens through it. 7. Stop negotiating with yourself. This isn't just a mindset issue, it's a neurological one. Your brain is a prediction machine. It tries to keep you safe by favoring what's familiar, easy, and comfortable. The part of the brain responsible for that survival-based decision-making is the amygdala, which is deeply wired to resist discomfort. When you're faced with a difficult task, whether it's waking up early, having a hard conversation, or going to the gym, your brain looks for ways to avoid stress. That's when the negotiation begins, and the longer that negotiation goes on, the less likely you are to follow through. Research in behavioral psychology confirms this. According to the concept of decision fatigue, the more choices you give yourself, the more mentally exhausted you become. Every unnecessary decision, should I do it now or later? Should I skip this workout? Should I give myself a break today? Drains willpower. This is why successful individuals remove options. They eliminate negotiation before it starts. It's not about being robotic, it's about being strategic. This leads directly into the idea that high achievers don't give themselves options, they give themselves orders. That line isn't just strong, it's scientific. In military training, high-performance coaching, and behavioral therapy, pre-commitment is a key strategy. When you decide in advance that something will be done, regardless of how you feel, you bypass emotional resistance. Navy SEALs and elite athletes are trained to execute without hesitation. Not because they feel like it, but because it's the standard. They operate off principle, not preference. That level of internal authority is what this paragraph points to. Now consider the idea that force removes choice. Force here isn't aggression, it's non-negotiable action. It's discipline in its purest form. When you force yourself to take action, especially when your emotions say otherwise, you eliminate the mental loophole. This has powerful effects on identity formation. According to studies on self-determination theory, repeated deliberate action reinforces intrinsic motivation and builds a sense of agency. You stop acting like someone trying to succeed. You become the kind of person who succeeds. Identity doesn't just follow belief, it follows behavior. That's why the next line hits so hard. Every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," your brain gets weaker. This isn't an exaggeration. Procrastination has been shown to physically alter brain function. A 2016 study from Ruhr-Universität Bochum in Germany used brain scans to reveal that habitual procrastinators have a larger amygdala and weaker connections between the amygdala and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and self-control. In simple terms, The more you delay action, the more your brain wires itself to avoid action in the future. You literally become someone who struggles to follow through. But there's good news. The reverse is also true. Every time you do the hard thing, even when you don't want to, you strengthen your neural pathways for discipline, willpower, and resilience. This is the science of neuroplasticity. Your brain changes based on what you repeatedly do. That's why the line, "I don't care how I feel, I'm doing this," is so powerful. It's not a motivational quote, it's a neurological strategy. It's how you teach your brain that action matters more than mood. And over time, this mindset builds a version of you that doesn't crack under pressure, that doesn't fold under fatigue, that doesn't negotiate with weakness. It builds a mind that cannot be broken, a mind that operates independently of excuses, external validation, or fleeting emotions. That kind of mental architecture is rare, and it's what separates average from elite. The final line of the paragraph, "The most dangerous version of yourself, the one that does it anyway," sums up everything. Danger here doesn't mean reckless, it means unshakable. It refers to the kind of person who's immune to the usual traps: fatigue, distraction, procrastination, doubt. That kind of person is dangerous because they're consistent, because they can't be stopped by mood swings or minor obstacles, because they act when others hesitate. And in a world where most people are governed by how they feel, the person who can move without permission from emotion becomes a force of nature. Let's talk about real-world examples. Think of people like Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL commander. He wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every day to train, not because he always feels motivated, but because it's a non-negotiable standard. Or David Goggins, who ran 100-mile races with broken bones. Why? Because he trained himself to do it anyway. These individuals don't have superpowers. They just don't waste time arguing with themselves. They act, they execute, they obey their own commands. But you don't need to be a SEAL or an ultra-marathoner to apply this. The principle works on any level, whether it's building a business, getting fit, studying for exams, or learning a new skill. Stop negotiating. Make the decision once. Build systems around it. Then follow through no matter how you feel. You don't need more motivation. You don't need more inspiration. You need self-command. And self-command only grows when you remove the option to retreat. When you tell your mind, "This is what we're doing," and then do it without hesitation, without a mental debate, without emotional polling. That's how you become disciplined. That's how you become reliable. That's how you become powerful. Because the most dangerous version of yourself isn't the one who gets hyped up. It's the one who gets it done. Every time, no matter what. 8. Break or build. There is no in-between. Let's begin with the opening statement. Every decision you make either strengthens you or softens you. This isn't a metaphor, it's a neurological fact. Your brain is constantly changing in response to how you act. This process is called neuroplasticity, and it means that every repetition, every choice to work or to procrastinate, to push forward or to quit, literally rewires your brain. When you choose discipline, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, planning, and control, gets stronger. When you choose ease, the limbic system, centered on emotion and impulse, takes over. Over time, one of those systems will dominate your behavior. This is why the paragraph emphasizes choice. When you choose the hard path, the workout you didn't want to do, the study session you nearly skipped, the focus you forced in a noisy world, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who gets it done. That's not just willpower, it's identity construction. According to research by Stanford psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck, people who associate effort with personal growth develop a growth mindset, a belief that abilities can be improved through dedication and hard work. These individuals not only achieve more, but also recover from failure faster. Why? Because they see every hard choice as an opportunity to build, not just to survive. And this applies on a micro level. Small actions matter more than people think. A 2006 study published in European Journal of Social Psychology by Philippa Lally and her team found that on average, it takes 66 days to form a habit. But the real takeaway wasn't the number, it was the principle. Every single repetition mattered. Missing a day didn't kill the habit, but each time a participant made the right choice, the habit became stronger. That's exactly what this paragraph is teaching. Success is built choice by choice, brick by brick, not in grand gestures, but in the tiny, seemingly insignificant decisions made daily. Which is why the next part hits so hard. But when you give in to laziness, distraction, comfort, you chip away at your edge. Notice the wording, chip away. It doesn't happen all at once. One missed workout doesn't ruin your body. One lazy day doesn't destroy your momentum. But the danger lies in pattern recognition. Your brain is watching, it's noticing what you allow. And if you start letting yourself off the hook consistently, the brain begins to normalize that behavior. What was once just a break becomes how you operate. This connects to a core idea in behavioral science, the consistency principle. According to Dr. Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, humans have a deep psychological need to remain consistent with their past actions. Once you make a decision, especially one that you repeat, your brain aligns your future behavior to match. That's why every lazy choice isn't just a temporary lapse, it's a message to your subconscious, this is who I am now. And the more often you repeat that message, the more difficult it becomes to reverse it. This is where the paragraph's title comes into full force. Break or build. There is no in-between, because in truth, most people live under the illusion of neutrality. They think skipping the workout, delaying the task, or choosing comfort just this once won't affect the bigger picture, but it does. Not because of the missed effort itself, but because of what it says about your standard. And standards, once lowered, are rarely lifted back up without significant effort. As former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. Why? Because discipline is what protects your standards from erosion. Let's bring it into real-world examples. Look at elite performers, whether in sports, business, or the arts, and you'll see that the separation isn't just in talent, it's in how they treat the small things. Michael Jordan didn't become great by doing big things occasionally. He became great by doing small things, repetitively with intensity. Tim Grover, his trainer, said Jordan never skipped a workout, not because he always wanted to, but because he never negotiated with discipline. He chose the hard thing every time, and it built him into someone who didn't just play the game, he dominated it. Or consider someone building a business. Success doesn't come from one viral post or one brilliant pitch. It comes from sending that extra email, refining the offer again, reading when others are resting, pushing content when it feels pointless. Each one of those decisions either builds the brand or chips away at it. There is no middle ground. Either the foundation gets stronger or it weakens. Now bring that down to your daily life. Every time you hit snooze, scroll instead of study, or delay action, ask yourself, am I building or am I breaking? And the answer will always be clear, because inaction is not neutral, it's regression. Distraction is not harmless, it's directionless. And laziness isn't rest, it's rot in disguise. The good news, the inverse is equally true. Every time you do the hard thing, even for 5 minutes, you reinforce your power. You're not just finishing a task, you're telling your brain, this is who I am. You're laying down another layer of identity. You're stacking proof that you can be trusted to show up for yourself. And over time, those repetitions don't just build momentum, they build character. Success then becomes less about massive achievement and more about consistency in execution. That's what the paragraph means when it says success isn't complicated, it's cumulative. The formula is simple: make one strong decision, then make another, then repeat. Momentum is a snowball, small at first, but once it rolls, it becomes unstoppable. That's how you build something real. So when you're at a crossroads, when you're tempted to take the easy way out, to skip the hard thing, to push it to tomorrow, remember this: it's not just about today, it's about what you're building or what you're breaking. You're either strengthening your edge or softening it. There is no in-between, only choices and consequences. Choose to build every time. 9. Ignore the applause. Let's start with the first truth. When you begin to force success, people will notice. Some will admire, some will criticize, most won't understand. This isn't speculation, it's human behavior backed by psychology. Social comparison theory, introduced by Leon Festinger, explains how people naturally compare themselves to others to assess their own worth and progress. When you start leveling up, it disrupts the equilibrium of those around you. Some feel inspired, some feel threatened, some project their own insecurities onto you. The applause you get might feel good, but it's unreliable, inconsistent, and often rooted in things that have nothing to do with your actual effort or value. This is where things become dangerous. The brain is wired to crave approval. The release of dopamine, the pleasure and motivation chemical, is triggered by praise and validation, likes, compliments, awards, all give your brain a hit of temporary satisfaction, but that can quickly become an addiction. You start chasing more validation, more visibility, more external reward. And without realizing it, your work becomes performative. You begin creating, acting, and moving, not based on what's right, but based on what will be liked. That's why the paragraph says, ignore all of them. Not because people's opinions don't matter at all, but because they can't be your compass. When you build your life around applause, you become easy to manipulate. You're driven by responses, not principles. You become reactive instead of intentional. And eventually, when the applause fades, as it always does, you lose momentum because your fuel source was external, not internal. Now look at the line, the journey to success is silent, lonely, misunderstood. This is not exaggeration, it's reality for almost every person who's built something great. The early stages of success are quiet. You're working when no one sees you. You're showing up when there's no audience. You're struggling through failures that no one claps for. In fact, most people don't understand what you're doing at all. They'll question you. They'll doubt you. Some will even try to talk you out of it, not because they hate you, but because your ambition makes them uncomfortable. This is supported by what psychologists call status quo bias. People prefer things to remain the same, and when you challenge that through growth, it disturbs their perception of reality. But if you can survive that silent stage, if you can keep going without applause, you build something stronger than success, self-mastery. That's what the next line emphasizes. The reward is not the recognition, it's the transformation. And that's the truth. You don't grow because people cheer for you. You grow because you grind when nobody notices, when no one's watching, when you're not getting likes, shares, or applause. The transformation happens in obscurity, and that transformation is what creates long-term greatness. Let's tie this to research. Studies on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, especially the work of psychologist Edward Deci, have found that people who are driven by intrinsic goals like self-improvement, growth, meaning, perform better, stay more consistent, and experience deeper satisfaction than those chasing extrinsic rewards, money, fame, validation. External rewards can actually reduce motivation over time, especially when they replace the internal joy of the craft. That's why elite performers in any field tend to go dark. They stop announcing every move, they stop needing validation, because they've shifted from outcome-driven to process-obsessed. That leads us to one of the most powerful lines in this paragraph, the self-mastery that comes from doing the work when no one claps. That's where the real magic is. Self-mastery means you no longer need applause to move. You move because it's who you are. You execute because it's non-negotiable. And every time you train in silence, every time you work when there's no feedback, you harden your mindset. You train yourself to operate in any environment. No praise, no support, no fanfare. That's the kind of discipline that doesn't fade. This is what separates the amateurs from the professionals. Amateurs get hyped when people cheer and lose steam when they don't. Professionals execute with or without energy, with or without recognition. They understand that the process is the reward, the work is the prize, not the likes, not the applause, not the validation. That's why the final words in this paragraph hit with such force. Stay dangerous. Stay focused. Let the results make the noise. Stay dangerous means stay unpredictable. Stay self-reliant. Don't reveal everything. Don't broadcast every move. When people can't figure out your next step, they can't interfere with your progress. Stay focused is a reminder to lock in on what truly matters, the mission, the execution, the improvement, not the noise, not the metrics, not the audience. And finally, let the results make the noise, because results speak louder than announcements. You don't need to prove anything when you're building something real. This mindset is embodied by some of the most successful and respected individuals across industries. Think of icons like Steve Jobs, who often retreated into deep focus before launching game-changing products, or Michael Jordan, who trained in silence while his opponents talked, or Beyoncé, who drops entire albums without warning, letting the art do the speaking. These individuals are not driven by applause, they are driven by vision, and because of that, their work stands the test of time. You can do the same, but only if you make this mental shift. Don't perform. Don't build for attention. Build for excellence. Build for who you're becoming. Do the hard work in silence and let the world react when you're done, not while you're in the middle of becoming. Because applause fades, but mastery doesn't. And real respect comes not from the noise you make, but from the results you create. 10. This is your moment. Take it. No one is coming to save you. That single sentence carries a lifetime of truth. Whether you're talking about career, health, finances, or purpose, waiting for someone else to show up with the answer is a guaranteed path to stagnation. Studies in locus of control theory developed by psychologist Julian B. Rotter show that individuals with an internal locus of control, those who believe they are responsible for their outcomes, consistently outperform those with an external locus who think outcomes depend on luck, other people, or circumstances. Why? Because those with internal control don't wait, they act. When this paragraph says, "No one is going to hand you greatness," it's rejecting the entitlement mindset so common in the modern world. Many people believe they deserve success because they've worked hard for a few weeks, followed motivational pages, or posted about their goals. But success doesn't respond to declarations, it responds to relentless, measurable action. It isn't handed out like a trophy for showing up, it's earned, brick by brick, hour by hour, day by day. You have to take it, you have to fight for it. These aren't metaphorical words, they're real-world operating principles. In every domain of high performance, sports, business, art, leadership, those who win are not the most gifted, but the most aggressive in pursuit of their goals. Angela Duckworth's groundbreaking research in her book Grit proves this. She found that the people who achieve the highest levels of success are not the most talented, but the most resilient. They show up consistently, bounce back from failure, and fight harder than anyone else. This leads to the next crucial line. You have to force yourself into the life you know you were born to live. That's a profound psychological shift. You're not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for the right time. You're not waiting for confidence. You're forcing your way into your destiny. This isn't a passive process. It's an aggressive commitment to rewrite your life by acting daily in alignment with your highest values, regardless of how you feel. And then the hammer drops. So stop waiting, stop hesitating, stop hoping it gets easier. If you're someone who says, "I'll start when I'm ready," or "when life calms down," or "once I feel motivated again," understand that these are delay tactics. Behavioral scientists call this temporal discounting, the human tendency to put off hard action in favor of short-term comfort. The longer you delay, the harder it becomes. Life won't suddenly get easier. What changes is you. You become stronger, more focused, more capable, not by waiting but by forcing yourself to act when it's hardest. The paragraph then offers a tactical shift. Force yourself to be consistent, to be ruthless with your time, to be relentless in your actions. This isn't about being extreme, it's about being intentional. Every high-achieving person operates with a heightened sense of urgency around time. They protect it like a precious asset, because it is. According to a 2018 American Time Use Survey, the average American spends nearly 5 hours a day on leisure and entertainment, including scrolling social media. That's over 1,800 hours per year. If even half of that was redirected toward learning, building, and executing, you could become dangerous. Consistency is king. It's the difference between wishing and winning. And it's not about intensity once in a while, it's about effort every day. This is what creates what psychologists call a compound identity, the person you become through your repeated actions. When you consistently act in alignment with your goals, you forge a new identity, one that doesn't flinch under pressure. Which brings us to the most powerful phrase in the entire paragraph, because success isn't for the chosen, it's for the forged. That completely dismantles the myth of natural-born greatness. The idea that success belongs to a gifted few is false. Repeated research, including Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset, shows that talent matters far less than effort, strategy, and resilience. You are not fixed, you are forgeable. You are a blacksmith in your own mind, shaping your focus, your discipline, your hunger through action, not talk. And finally, the paragraph closes with this, and you are forging yourself now. That's not just a motivational line, it's a mirror. It's telling you every choice you're making right now is shaping the kind of person you become tomorrow. Skipping the work, you're forging apathy. Making excuses, you're forging weakness. But showing up, pushing through, staying locked in, you're forging something rare, someone who finishes what they start. And that's the whole point of this paragraph. You do not need to be ready. You do not need to have it all figured out. You only need to start, to act, to face the resistance head on, to force movement, because life isn't going to slow down. No one is going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Now is the perfect time." The perfect time doesn't exist. The only moment you truly own is this one. and what you do with it right now defines the rest of your life. So take the shot, build the thing, make the move.